Yeah, protesting against Vladimir Putin in Russia is an easy way to get sent to the gulag. So these people feel strongly enough about being against the war that they're willing to risk this. We bring in Dmitry Alperovitch, Chairman, Silverado Policy Accelerator, formerly expert with the U.S. government as it relates to Russia, cybersecurity, Russian propaganda. You think about this, Vladimir Putin got this big bump in popularity after Crimea. He viewed himself and sold himself as the guy who was going to bring the motherland back together. Are these protests a sort of a flash in the bucket, or a flash in the pan, or is Putin going to have to get this done in X number of days before public sentiment turns against him?
Well, this is definitely not 2014, and Ukraine, all of Ukraine, is really not Crimea, that most Russians were supportive of getting back into Russia's sphere of influence and annexing it. And the reality is that they've done very little prep in terms of propaganda to convince the Russian public that this war was necessary. In fact, they were trying to sort of go through these motions diplomatically to make it seem like he was not going to invade. And only in the last week or so did you see the ramp up in propaganda and making really outrageous and frankly silly statements that the Ukrainians were pursuing nuclear weapons, things that are not credible even to the people that are only watching Russian state televisions and believing this propaganda. So the Russian public is ambivalent about this war. There's certainly people that are hardcore protesters. They're relatively small, but the rest of the population is not enthusiastic about it at all. They may not be protesting it yet. They may be sort of looking to see how it pans out. And yes, if it becomes a quagmire, if you have tens of thousands of casualties coming back to Russia, it will be a huge problem for Putin.
Dmitry, cyber warfare, obviously a serious threat at this point. We've already seen it happen, crippling the Ukrainian government by the Russians. When you talk about vulnerabilities here at home in the U.S. in terms of a cyber attack, where are our greatest targets, and where are the places that you think the U.S. government are watching tonight? And I think more importantly, some steps that people every day can take to make sure that we don't open ourselves up to this very real threat.
So U.S. government today is on a high alert. We have, of course, instituted pretty severe sanctions, actually, on the Russian economy, even though it's not yet touching oil and gas, but sanctioning their big banks, preventing their really titans of industry across numerous sectors from being able to finance themselves on the global markets is really severe, is going to have a severe impact on their economy. And I expect retaliation. I expect economic retaliation, but I also expect retaliation in cyberspace. We may very well see attacks on our financial sector, on our energy sector from state groups, state intelligence agencies in Russia. But one thing that I think we're definitely going to see is more ransomware attacks from criminal groups that are going to now get this implicit message from the Russian government that Western organizations are, it's an open season on them. They can target them without any fear of being prosecuted in Russia.
What's the best way to combat that?
Well, the best way is to be vigilant. The best way is to not click on anything that you think is suspicious, because that's how they really get you. They social engineer you to click on a link, open up an attachment, and then they enter your computer through that mechanism because you've now sort of opened up a virtual door into your network. So if it looks fishy, if it looks suspicious, just don't click on it. Ask an IT professional or security professional whether they think it's safe or not.
Yeah, Dmitry, getting back to this idea of propaganda, there was actually a lot of discussion that some of Russia's propaganda was being taken off the air. Russia Today, the mouthpiece of the Kremlin in English, if you went to their website, it's where I get all my news, everybody else should too, to watch it for a little while and see what Putin was saying. You couldn't. They had a denial of service attack today. But we did put together a little montage of what is being allowed to be put out there. Take a listen.
What Putin is doing, he had every right to do. At the end of the day, he was defending those two nations that he just made independent from ongoing years of war that the Ukraine has been inflicting.
Welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Moscow repeatedly warned it would not tolerate Ukraine being used by NATO to threaten Russia's national security.
Moscow Peter, I guess you could call him, something like Baghdad Bob of this war. But as you think about the offense, or the defense right now that you talked about with Marnie going on about American companies, there's this debate about using offensive cyber weapons by the United States against Russia. Describe for us, because you've been in these discussions, the arguments. On one side, it is, do we really want to use our ways into the Russian power plants and the Russian infrastructure and the Russian military on this one? On the other side, if at least in some way, push back on Vladimir Putin and his military, they're going to just keep doing whatever they want.
Well, there are a number of considerations here. The first one, and it's really a priority for the Biden administration, is do not get into a war with Russia, right? We do not want a conflict with Russia that would be devastating to the world, given that they're one of the top nuclear powers in the world. So they're looking very carefully at potential for escalation here. Putin warned everyone on Monday when he announced the recognition of these republics, and then later when he announced the invasion, that he will retaliate very strongly to anyone that attempts to interfere in this operation. So that's one consideration. The second consideration is, what effect can you really have? Perhaps we can slow them down by a few days. Is that really worth it? Is that really going to achieve any strategic advantage for the United States? And what kind of blowback can we get in return? And three, are we going to expose our tradecraft? Are we going to expose our tools that we are saving perhaps for a much more strategic purpose in doing that right now in Ukraine? Those are the considerations that we'll be looking at.
Dmitry, what would be, in your mind, the red lines for the U.S. government and for the Russian government? Obviously, Vladimir Putin threatened nuclear war if he is attacked, so that's one thing. But for the U.S. government, what do they typically define as their red lines? Russians shut down the gas supply for the East Coast. We didn't hear about any retaliations. What has been communicated in the back channels to Vladimir Putin of, if you mess with X, there'll be problems?
So the U.S. government usually avoids defining the red lines very specifically because we don't want, of course, our adversaries to walk up right to the line but not cross it. We want to be ambiguous about when we would exactly retaliate. But you're absolutely right. We've been hit numerous times. Our critical infrastructure has been hit by ransomware groups. Of course, Russia claimed they had nothing to do with it. And it was just criminal groups that were behind it. But we know, of course, that there's a symbiotic relationship between criminal groups in Russia and the state. Oftentimes they get arrested and then they're offered a choice. You can go to jail for 10 years or you can go work for the state and continue hacking. And they often choose, of course, that alternative.
No kidding.
So,
Dmitry, the global implications of all of this are far-reaching, to say the least. You say that China could be the biggest beneficiary of this war. Why is that?
When I look at this current situation, we've been very focused on China, of course, going back to the Trump administration and really continuing to the Biden administration, continuing this pivot to Asia. And now we're getting distracted. We're getting dragged back into Europe. We're sending our military back into Europe. China loves this because our attention is off them and they can continue to pursue their policies, both economic policies that are endangering American prosperity and, of course, their military buildup. But more importantly, as we're putting these sanctions upon Russia and shutting them off from the global markets, guess who's going to come to their aid? It's going to be China. They're going to offer them financing terms that are going to be highly, highly advantageous to the Chinese. So they're just going to enrich themselves and make themselves more powerful as a result of these actions.
A threat that is layered very deeply. Dmitry, we appreciate your insight tonight on a number of topics, in particular the cyber warfare that could take place and all the propaganda, which I think helps clarify why you're hearing so many different stories coming out of that region of the world. Dmitry, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.